And the United Nations has released a bombshell report into serious human rights abuses in China's Xinjiang region on Wednesday. They allege that there were credible and they are citing possible crimes against humanity in China. The UN Human Rights Office, OHCHR, has issued the long-awaited report, and they say that the government is responsible for serious human rights violations, while some abuses may constitute crimes against humanity. But China, on the outside, denies these reports.
We have made it very clear to the High Commissioner and on a number of other occasions that we are firmly opposed to such a report. We all know so well that the so-called Xinjiang issue is a completely fabricated lie out of political motivations, and its purpose definitely is to undermine China's stability and to obstruct China's development. And the Human Rights High Commissioner should stay independent and should avoid interfering in China's internal affairs.
Parmeshwar is joining us on this. Parmeshwar, tell us more about what this report says, and also China is rejecting this report, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You're absolutely right, Priyanshi. But in a blistering report, the UN's outgoing human rights chief confirmed that China has committed serious human rights violations against the Uyghur Muslim community, adding that such acts are potentially crimes against humanity. Now, at times, this UN report that's just been released, it actually reads like an Orwellian novel. It says almost all interviewees describe either injections, pills, or both being administered regularly, as well as blood samples being regularly collected in what China calls vocational education and training center facilities. Interviewees also say, and the report cites this, that they were consistent in their descriptions of how the administered medicines actually made them feel drowsy. Michelle Bachelet, who didn't publish the long overdue report until just 13 minutes before the end of her tenure last night, called on countries to stop repatriating Uyghurs to China, which her office said has conducted large-scale arbitrary detention in the Xinjiang region. It's resorted to tactics like torture, forced labor, rape, cultural persecution, and also violated women's reproductive rights. The report cites patterns of torture inside what Beijing called vocational centers, which were part of its reputed plan to initially boost economic development within this region, and it points to credible allegations of torture or ill treatment, including cases of sexual violence, as I just pointed out. Now, the report was drawn in part from the interviews with former detainees and others familiar with the conditions at 8 detention centers in Xinjiang region. Hundreds of thousands continue to languish in prisons on completely vague and secret charges as we speak. It's also crucial to note that some activists are actually dissatisfied with this report's refusal to use the term genocide. As expected, though, China has rejected any assertion of human rights violations in Xinjiang, saying its policy in the region was about de-radicalization and anti-terrorism. In response to this report, the Chinese ambassador to the UN says the report is fabricated and it's full of lies, as you just heard. In fact, Beijing contends the report is part of a Western campaign to actually smear China's reputation. Experts, meanwhile, feel these damning findings explain why Beijing fought tooth and nail to prevent the publication of this report. But it's fair to say this report has fanned a tug of war for diplomatic influence with the West over the rights of the region's native Uyghurs as well as other ethnic groups.